Hello, everybody. We are back living the authentic life, and I'm so excited to welcome one of my girlfriends who I consider to be inner circle, who I've really gotten to know over the last few years, Jennifer Koller. Yay!
It's so great to be here today.
This woman travels the world, has lived all over the planet, has children that have done amazing things, and she, by education, through experience, helps people get their kids into the schools that they want to go to, that they're best place to go to, that will thrive. And from what I researched, I think your techniques could help people of any age. I don't think it's just about people in school.
Yeah, no, that's true. I do work with young adults, and I call them young adults, although some of them are in high school, but this is kind of their first adult experience in the sense that I try to give them as much ownership as possible of what we're doing together. But yeah, I think you're right, because I am a trained coach as well. So I learned leadership and career coaching at Rice University after I moved to Houston, and that has really helped me enormously in my business. So I use coaching techniques in all kinds of settings, not just work settings, but even with family and friends.
Well, I try to use, I think there was an old movie that you train your husband like you train your dog. Oh. Did you see that one? So no. I try to use those coaching things, but it doesn't work on Rob or Grace Kelly. So maybe I can take some notes from you to and see if it'll work. But your education is incredible. You went to Wellesley, which
yes,
is
I did.
I respected, and then the London School of Economics.
Yes, indeed.
And then you just threw out Rice, which I didn't even know about that. So I think you come with some pretty great credentials if you're looking to get in a place that's respected. But also, you have gone to a vast different types of education. And I think that's what's hard for kids today is they start with the name. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Versus starting with what's best for them.
Yes, I would agree. I think, and that's okay. I mean, if that's all you know. In fact, as you know, I work with European students mainly, and those students really, their level of knowledge about U.S. universities comes from, they've heard of the Ivy League from the media, from films. They've heard about big football universities and basketball universities, and when I say that, I mean universities that don't exist in other countries. So we have universities that have huge sporting facilities and sports teams. I mean, it's an attractive thing for some students who are from other countries. They just think that's really interesting. So, but that's not always where students end up, because that's not what they really need. So we work together usually over the course of 2 years to really spend a lot of time in the first year in discovery. So what is it really like? What do you really want to study? What are your strengths, and what are, the things that you want to get out of university? Those are the most important questions that we try to answer in the first year or so. And then we get down to the nitty-gritty about how are you going to position yourself then to get to where you want to go.
And you have a lot of different accreditations that we'll talk about throughout the process, but one of them is you, and I can look it up, but just tell me the organization that also, it does it with a computer, and it helps you analyze different benchmarks with kids. Is that something you do with a test?
Oh, are you talking about U-Science, or are you talking about?
Well, is there a computer test that you first give to kids when they come in to meet with you to figure out through a computer system what's best for them?
Right.
Or do you do that yourself?
Well, no, I use an assessment. I use a couple of assessments. Good. So I am skilled in the EQI, but I'm also skilled in U-Science, which is a platform that allows students to answer a lot of questions online about themselves. And then that, produces a report with a lot of information about the student. So it will give the student a list of skills, aptitudes, and interests, and then it produces, just a boatload of career choices. And what I like about U-Science, and I do use it as a first step, is that it introduces students to a lot of careers that they may not have heard of or thought of. Because when you're growing up in a family that's perhaps involved in medicine or involved in the financial industry or the creative industries, you're pretty much, sometimes your knowledge of the careers outside of that are limited, and even your knowledge of the careers that are within those fields is sometimes limited. And that can be because things change, because they do. I mean, as we know, people have multiple careers in their lives, and there are many things that didn't exist when their parents were starting out in their careers. So I try to, encourage students to be as open-minded as possible and to look at these suggestions and say, oh, what is this telling me? Like, sometimes we'll get a report that says, I'm a person who wants to be doing something hands-on, or I'm a person who wants to be doing something outdoors, or I'm somebody who wants to be working in a laboratory, or I'm somebody who has to be with other people and I'm going to be, a contributor, or maybe not going to be the leader right away. So, and then trying to tease out those aptitudes that they think are really the ones that apply to them, and then work out ways that they can demonstrate those strengths and aptitudes and skills. And that can be a lot more exploration, like what they're doing over the summer, internships, and even research projects, or other activities that they do in school that help them define who they are.
And I think it's so interesting because we've talked a lot personally about AI and computers and how the research can help. But it does then come to a person helping you walk through it. I remember back when, and you were incredible. I almost feel like it was your community service or what you were doing to give back to help Bella.
Oh.
And she had a college coach.
Yes.
But you would talk to her about things outside of what they were discussing. And his initial questionnaire, I didn't see it, but it gave us like the top 30 schools based upon what she wanted. Did she care about football? Did she want a small campus? Did she want to have an intimate professor-student relationship? Different questions. And it's interesting because I think she's at the school that was like 22nd on her list. So it doesn't always end up like that. And
No.
we travel to so many places, but the good thing is it gives you ideas and it opens your mind to things you would never consider. I'll start by saying I was born to be an Aggie family, and I was born to be an Aggie. And if I could get into college, that was where I was going. And then I chose to be a journalism major, but because I wanted to work in advertising because I liked the clothes that I saw in shows and these women being executives wearing great outfits and using marketing. And no one told me my first job out of college would make $16,000 a year. So had I had a career coach and known entry level, I'd be pulling out gum out ads from car magazines and sitting in a cubicle and not wearing cute suits making presentations. I might have chosen a different major or path, really looking at it. So let's talk about, I mean, I know I put a lot out there. But
Okay.
where the computer tells you, and then how you kind of lead them.
Well, it's not so much leading them. It's asking them questions like, do you think this is valid?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know the student as well as, they know themselves or their parents know them. I try to get input from parents as well. And even, in some cases, siblings and other family members. But just asking the student, does this feel like you? Because these assessments that we use are not always valid. They're not, they're not infallible. They're designed to be as accurate as they possibly can, but they're not always accurate. So, we need to talk through it. We do a debriefing, and if the student says, no, this is not me at all, and I want to, think about something else, I really try to think outside the box with all of my students and say, hey, I don't want to waste your time, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I've had the privilege of working with so many different kinds of students that I feel like that also influences my my ability to talk about engineering, art, design, history, languages, anything really, and talk about, well, how could you integrate this into what you're doing, and what would that, do for you? And when students are young, they don't always know what I'm talking about. So we just, I love it when we over time develop a relationship where they kind of finally get it. Okay, we're working towards, identifying something that's going to really be a thing that I can shine in, that I'm going to be doing well with, and that I'm going to have a future with.
And I love that you're also looking at what they like to do and what sort of sets them on fire. Mm-hmm. Because one of the things I saw in an Instagram post this week was don't just love your job your love. So it talks about figuring out what you love. And oftentimes, like, I love handbags and I love marketing, so I landed here. But for 22 years, I did something different.
Yes.
And we don't always get to love every job we have, or even when we have our dream job, we don't get to have everything. But to be realistic with them about where they are now and what they see themselves doing well in, or where they can excel, and what that might lead to, or what door that might open, is really powerful. Because sometimes our family can't see what we really are, because they want to see us doing what they think we should do.
Yes. And I sometimes run up against that. I remember once I had a student a long time ago, and he really wanted to do game design, but the parents were like, I don't think so. But you know what? He wrote about game design, and parents never saw it. He got into some really great places. He was just really interested in it. He had a lot to say about it, and he has gone on to a technical career, but in tech. It's not game design, but nonetheless, that's something.
A pathway.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something also that I talk to students a lot about. It's that, you have to build. This is all about building. And this is a very important skill that young people need to know. We're building. Every day that we do something, we're building something. So maybe you take a wrong turn, but you're still building, because you got a little bit of experience doing something that maybe isn't exactly what you want to do or where you want to be, but you have to add, there are all these steps along the way. So there's no guarantee, but you've got to go out and do things.
Well, I also feel like we make things black and white, and we either categorically say something was a success or something was a failure.
Yeah.
And I really am trying to remodel my mind, and then help remodel Bella's mind around that, is that we're learning from all of those. And sometimes your step that didn't give you ultimately the result you were looking for is getting you closer to where you need to be. And also, every time we overcome a failure, we learn that we have the capacity to do something wrong and to go on to do something right.
Yes.
And there is so much power in confidence versus fear being the driver. So it's hard if you're with these kids and you see their value, but they're in a home or they're in a school with these other things coming at them. So how do you kind of break through all that other noise, because you don't have that much time with them?
Yeah, that's true. I think they have to trust me, and trust is a really big thing in what I do. I like for my families and my students to feel like I'm a trusted advisor. And I do think that is what happens, because people tend to come back to me over time. They come back to me when they want to go to grad school. They even come back to me about careers. And I enjoy that a lot. I guess, how do I build the trust? I think I'm just a really good listener. So I'm listening. I'm trying to pick up what they're trying to tell me, and maybe not in so many words. Mm-hmm. And also, I learned from my partner and my mentor, you got to have a different lens on. You can't always interpret people's answers and actions in the way you think that they are, or from your own perspective. You've got to step back and say, what's going on here? I mean, remember, these are adolescents still. They're 16, 17, 18 years old. There can be so many things going on affecting their decisions from one day to the next. And I love working with students who really know what they want to do. So, for example, I have met many art students over the years, and it's pretty magical because they know they're artists or designers or musicians or dancers or whatever they are. And that is very, very powerful, because if you support that in that person, they will pursue it and they will be good at it, but they're so strong in that. But I would say many other students that I meet, and this is the majority of students, they don't know. They don't know where to go. They don't know what they want to do. They don't really know all their skills. They kind of know this is what I'm good at in school. And so we talk a lot about that too. Why are you good at that in school? What are the skills that make you good at that in school? What is it about the way your mind works? And, is this something that you want to develop? And I try to use a lot of outside resources. I get people I used to recommend books and reading and reading newspapers and different kinds of things. Now I'm recommending, obviously podcasts, YouTube, even YouTube. I like, sometimes kids come to me and they're really good at math and physics, but they know zero about engineering because they don't know what it is and they need to find out about it. Well, how do they want to find out about it? They want to find out about it by watching a YouTube video. That's a good jumping off point. That doesn't tell you everything you need to know, but it's a good jumping off point for them to say, oh, okay, now I get what this is. No, it's for me. No, yes, it is for me, or no, it's not really for me. So, and then also to take that extra step and say, okay, if you want to be a tech entrepreneur, what do you need to do?
Wow.
I mean, think about that. That's like, that could be, I start Facebook in college, or that could be 20 years later after working at a couple of tech companies. I've got this idea in my head about something that I want to do, and how do I get to that? So those are the big questions. And I'm not sure if I answered your question. But
no, you did. And I feel like, so I was thinking of words to describe you, and the first word that came to me was strong.
Oh.
And then elegant and poised and also warm. So I feel like your strength, your confidence, the way that but how warm, and maybe that's non-judgmental, that they feel that.
Yeah.
Because I do think the other word I thought of it was curious. I feel like you ask questions and you're really interested, and you said it more as you're a listener, but I feel like you really are curious to learn about people. And I don't think everyone is that way. A lot of people are more interested in saying what they want to say than hearing what people say. So I think that probably helps to build the trust. And then you have this trust, they're submitting to schools, and after just going through it, there is no real magic rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
Why and how and who they accept and what's happening. So you're also not just selling a Birkin bag like I do, or a watch. You're working with someone to help them figure out how to grow where they land.
Yes.
How to work where they land to get to where they want to be. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, we have to prepare for all eventualities, especially, I think it's much more so when you're talking about applying to U.S. universities, because as you said, it seems like there's no rhyme or reason. There is. There are a lot of reasons. It's just that it's very individualized by university. And of course, I work with international students, so we even have that little extra layer in there that makes it more interesting, you could say.
Can I interrupt?
Yes.
Is it a higher percentage that get in, or a lower?
Well, like we say in college admissions, it depends. I mean,
okay, that's fair.
And the reason why I say that is because I think universities tend to advertise themselves as, oh, we're very, very diverse. We have a lot of international students. But in fact, you will rarely find universities in the US that have an undergraduate population of international students that's more than 15% of the class. And there are a lot of reasons for that. I mean, you have a lot more graduate students who are international students. I can give you a few examples, but let's just say, for example, MIT, they have 110 spots a year for international students going to MIT for a bachelor's degree. 110 worldwide. Wow. Think about the competition there. That's very stiff. Yet 50% of their graduate students are international students. And the reason why I mentioned the US is not just because of international students, it's also because of our selection process is very different from other countries. So in other countries, other European countries, typically there's less of a holistic evaluation of the applicant. There's more grades-based admission. So you don't apply to Cambridge if you're not going to get this on if you're not going to get 45 on your IB diploma, 45 out of 45. You're not going to apply to Cambridge if you're not getting 3 A levels. You're not going to apply to Cambridge if you are not a top student. You're just not going to do it because they're not going to select you. They're not going to give you the chance to get in because you're given predicted grades for your high school diploma, and if you can get the right level, so let's say you want to study history at Cambridge, you're going to have a 40, let's say they ask you for a 42 on your IB diploma, you're going to have to get that 42. So if you're getting 35 in school, you just don't want to waste that choice. Also, the choices are not unlimited. You can only apply to 5 universities in any given year in the United Kingdom, for example.
Whereas in the US, you could apply to 1,000.
Yes. Well, no. There are some limits, but like in the Common App, you can only apply to 20 universities in the Common App. But students apply to 20 universities. Think about that. So it just makes it more and more selective. And then it's harder to tell because it's not just your grades.
Real number.
It's not just your grades. And this is for highly selective institutions. There are a lot of institutions that are less selective and can be very, very good. And that's true in other countries as well.
And so would you say that the people that you're coaching are sticking with the places that they go as freshmen, or that you're seeing more movement? Because it seems to be a trend that people are moving from their college of choice more than, say, 20 years ago.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, I'll make 2 points about that.
Not necessarily, not your clients, but are you seeing it as a whole? Because I feel like when I talk to parents, people start in one place and they're more apt to go, where I never would possibly have thought about
transferring. Yeah. I don't know the statistics on that. I don't know if transferring is more common in the US. I know my students stay where they go for the most part. That said, I do work with a lot of transfer students. And the reason for that is because sometimes they start out in the wrong place. Maybe they should have come to me first and they would have gone to the right place in the first place. Or they've gone to a university in their home country and, that's the other thing. Sometimes in European universities, like in the Netherlands, for example, Switzerland, France, there is kind of admissions after the gate, if you will, which means that students don't always pass their first year. So, and in some countries you have more than 1 year to pass, in other countries you don't. So sometimes students don't pass, and then they might come to me and say, I really want to transfer because I haven't passed my year and I've got to redo my year, but I'd rather go somewhere else. So I do work with a lot of transfer students from Europe, and that can be very successful as well.
And how would you compare going to school? So you have lived around the world, but mostly in Geneva, London,
Italy, France.
So how does their preparation for college differ from our preparation from college?
Well, I cannot speak about all of the educational systems in Europe, but I will say that many educational systems in Europe have a universities track. And you get on that at different ages. And if you do the high school, then that leads to university, you can go to university. But you might not get into that high school because of your performance up until age 11 or 12. And then, so that's why, people talk a lot about how high school is, how college is free in Europe. And that's not really true. It is very much less expensive in some countries, probably most European countries, the public universities, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody gets to go.
It's not access for everyone.
It's not access for everyone. And there are ways around that.
Okay, that's good to know.
But typically students get selected out at a younger age, and then they go different pathways that prepare them for perhaps careers in certain industries, or maybe they're expected to just get a high school diploma and not go to university. It's not a given.
So let's talk about resumes, because I feel like we've been building Bella's resume since she was like 6 years old.
Yeah, you have. You've done a great job.
But I feel like a lot of parents, especially when their kids are in sports and passionate about that, in their high school years, realize at this place that, and Bella wasn't interested in sports, so we found other things like giving back and being in the community and doing different things. How do you guide people to do what they really love and figure that out and then share that? Because I think it's tricky if it doesn't translate easily.
Yes, that's true. And I think also maybe there aren't all the same opportunities for everybody everywhere. So, you mentioned sports. Sports is very big in the United States, I know, and students spend a lot of time on it. I think it's tough to then try to work out to just even find the time to do other things that they're interested in.
Yes.
Yeah. But I like to, I don't necessarily work with the younger students. I will work with families though, and I advise on that. We do some, planning for the whole 4 years. So I might hopefully meet them early in the high school process, and that's when I talk about that. So I, try to make sure that they're able to give their child outlets for things that they might want to do, and maybe things that they hadn't thought of.
Yes, and I think that's important. So we, for example, joined the National Charity League, and we spent a lot of time going to meetings with other moms and kids, but we weren't in the trenches, and Bella prefers to be physically doing things. And there were opportunities for that, but it just wasn't the right fit. But everyone we talked to around us said, you can't drop out. That would be horrible for her resume. So we talked to her college counselor, and she chose other ways to get more engaged. So we were part of the Houston Community Foundation, and she was able to go out and meet with these charities, volunteer with the charities, meet the people getting the services, and it was much more rewarding. And then it ended up, she was taking her love of math and tutoring these kids. So she was finding a way to take her passion that she loved in school and share it.
Yes.
And I've heard from that's another thing that these higher learning college or higher education universities are looking for is not just your resume, but that it makes sense that you're taking what you love and what you say you are and living it out.
Yes. And sometimes that's a little bit stop and start, like you just described. I mean, obviously she did the right thing. She went after what she wanted to do, but within this broader picture of contributing to her community. So that is the kind of the ideal approach. And so sometimes it's a little stop and start. The student might get started in something and then they need to switch gears. But I think the most important thing that I focus on with students and families is, are you going to be able to talk about this? Can you talk about it, even just with me, about why you're doing this?
Yes.
What is it about this that you really like?
Yeah.
And then I know that later we're going to be able to write about it.
Yes.
And that, that just flows. They might be a terrible writer, but they can say a lot about something. And so then I might say, okay, write 3 pages, even though this is only a 500-word essay. Just tell me everything about this that you like. And then we come back and we say, okay, how do you make this into a good essay? How do you tell the university about yourself in this particular way? And that's very important. So we talk a lot about, I'm just trying to get out of them what it is that is really driving them if they're really involved in something or interested in something.
Well, a friend of mine's daughter is really involved with art. And so this summer she was going to art camps. And I said, if there's any way that you know someone that's involved with the at-risk community or giving back or doing things for those kids, to get her connected to that and do art with those kids and to take a leadership role might be a good opportunity for her.
Okay, you're a college counselor right there. That's it. That's the whole thing. It's like, how do I turn this into what I'm interested in, to some kind of meaningful work?
Yes.
And that can be any kind of meaningful work. When I say that doesn't mean, I think a lot of people, when I meet people, especially international families, they think, oh my gosh, my child has to volunteer everywhere they possibly can if they want to go to university in the United States, because there is a big focus on giving back. But it's about getting some skills and being able to develop in that way. So I think what you said is exactly right. It's like taking what you're interested in and then going that one step further.
But I think that's true with everyone. Like talking about being a coach, like we come alive when we find out what we love to do and we share that passion. And that's what I found. That's what I love so much about podcasting is I'm not passionate about college counseling, but I'm passionate about making people's lives better. And I see how passionate you are about it. And I see how it affected our life. So I can be passionate with you because you are. And I think that's what I've even seen at her huge University of Texas, is when they talk to students, they want to find out what makes them come alive. And they want to light that passion in them to make a difference in the world. And I think that it's incredible when you're able to find that mix, because it's hard once you get there to then know, because you think you land and it's magic. You've waited all these years and magic feels really different than what we think.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of hard work ahead. And, as colleges, they're under-resourced when it comes to careers, unfortunately. But there are lots of ways around that, lots of things that you can do. And you need to be working on that right from the get-go.
So let's talk about that, because she's asked me, like, okay, what organization? You go to these schools and they have, how do you know what to join? So she's gone back to her college counselor to kind of talk about these things.
Cool.
And I think that it is important because it becomes overwhelming. And so, for example, there's paths we've heard from kids. We talk about getting internships. She said, okay, I think I want to do an internship this summer, and then next summer I'll study abroad. Then I talked to other friends who are like, oh no, freshman year you need to study abroad, and then sophomore year you need to do the internship because that leads to the job and you might have more steps. So I know nothing's that definitive, but can we talk a little bit about this journey and how they should be thinking through some of this?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think when you get to college, it's very overwhelming. Colleges are doing their best to do, orientation and to get students to understand what it's all about. But I think most important thing really is always academics, is to be focusing on the academics.
And they forget that sometimes. They get so involved with making new friends.
They do.
Being independent.
Those are all things too. And you've got to learn those and you've got to go through those. And I think, what you're describing, saying, I need to do an internship in the sophomore year. Yeah, that's a pathway, and go abroad freshman year. Maybe not. It's really up to the student. Some students aren't ready for that study abroad after the first year being away. They need to get home and regroup. And you know what? Okay, let me just tell you about one of my own children. So, as you know, I have 3 children, and my eldest daughter, after her first year of college, she went back to her summer camp and taught sailing.
Aw.
She did not do an internship. And after that, it was one internship after another.
And she's a go-getter girl.
Yeah, she is. She runs her own aerospace technology company. She's the CEO of that. She is only 31 years old. She's worked at NASA. She's worked at SpaceX. She's landed the Perseverance on Mars. And she has 3 degrees, as you know. And she is a go-getter. But she also a couple of times told me, "Stop, Mom. I don't want to go to debate camp this summer. I need to be outside doing something." And so, you have to respect that too, because that doesn't necessarily block a student's chances. It may be just that they need that mental break
and that regroup and
that regrouping, and it depends on the student. I mean, I know my other daughter too, very successful, but she wanted to quit figure skating in high school. And I was that mom. I said, no, don't do it, because this is something you've spent a lot of time on, and you might want to continue doing it in college, even though right now it seems like you're tired of it, etc. But it might be something that you would be interested in doing in college. And in fact, she did. She was very interested in because it was so different. She was in a club sport. It was really, really fun. She had a different friend group. It was like a little bit aside from her studies in the sciences. And so, I think there are a lot of different ways to approach this, but I do agree that you need to kind of have a plan, and you need to think about it a little bit. You can't just say, oh, I'm just going to go and work my, summer job and hang out with my friends on the beach once you're in college. You've got to have a structure every summer, but you've also got to work in a little bit of playtime.
So I have done a lot of research with people living their best lives and living their longest lives in blue zones. And there's all these great factors about connection. 7 of the 9 factors are connection.
Oh, wow.
And which is really interesting, isn't it? And I've seen through the way, so we met through the Ferrari Club.
Oh, yes.
And I count you as one of a handful of couple friends where I'm friends with you and Rob's friends with your husband. So it's incredible that we have so much connection throughout things. But I feel like we were talking before camera, the way we grew up in an Italian cultural home, and the fact that you love movement. Yours is tennis, mine is yoga. I feel like those are really important things. We both seem to light up socially, but not quite as much as our husbands do.
That's fair.
We want to be social, but we also can be on our own.
Yes.
And we enjoy alcohol in moderation, but there were all these factors that go into it. So I think it's interesting too. I feel like Europe does a better job of kind of slowing down and the connection side of things than the U.S. does. I was just watching on TV this morning about how high schools are restricting phone use, and it's creating, certain high schools are making you turn your phone off, and how it's making kids talk more.
Oh, yeah. Well, I read last summer, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, which is a book all about that. It's about the kids who grew up in what he calls the cell phone generation. And I think it's so great that some school systems, even here in Texas, have adopted that no more phones in school, because they were literally like this all the time for years. And those
talking became difficult because they only knew how to text.
Yeah.
And I think that also leads to saying things you wouldn't say to someone's face, and it leads to behavior that's challenging. But so talk a little bit about like the culture of, is that hard for the kids coming from Europe to here or here to Europe? Are you feeling like that transition is, because I feel like they, like in Italy, they take the afternoon and the stores close, or they have the siesta and Spain, like different things. And they take so many weeks off in France for vacation. And here in the U.S., we're just go, 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 go.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one thing. I think some European students are attracted to that, They want to
Oh.
be part of our go, go, go culture. They see it. They think it's all happening here. And it's not easy to integrate into that. I think the biggest challenge is that they don't realize how homogenous university will be in terms of it is largely Americans. So they're entering this completely different culture. And they know that, but it's not until they get there that they realize it. And, you know, college is mixed. You know this because your daughter is a very mature young woman. There are a lot of kids who aren't really, you know, very mature when they land in college. It's their first time away from home, perhaps, and they, you know, they might be handling it differently. So I think there are two sides to that. I think that, yes, the European lifestyle is quite different. It is a little bit, I wouldn't say slower, but more, I hate to even say this, but it's a little more thoughtful, maybe taking your time about everything. But I do think that students come here for that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And it is part of the blue zones is taking time for reflection. And I feel like we've talked, both of us are constantly reading and curious as to different things. I'm reading Malcolm Gladwell's How to Talk to Strangers.
Oh, yes.
Have you read that yet? But it's fascinating about your first impression of someone versus in the trust levels that you have, which kind of go back to you and your students too.
Yeah.
And how all of that dynamic is. But, and then of course he did the 10,000 hour.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't create that, but he repeated it and became known as the one.
Yes.
So talk a little bit
right.
about the 10,000 hours and your students. Do you feel like a lot of the people getting into the higher level universities have found something they've invested 10,000 hours? And for example, you could be horseback riding and not do that, but you're so committed that you're willing to commit to something that much.
Oh, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Like
you might not be horseback riding in college,
right?
But you put in the effort and the hours to do it, and colleges find that part of your personality or the way you've described that in your essay, to be compelling.
Yes,
your daughter as a figure skater, she might not be figure skating for the team, but she was so committed and got up so early and invested the time into it.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, that does work. It works in the sense that you have something that you can talk about because you've built it up over time. But you can also talk about a lot of things. Like some students do a lot of different things, and being able to say, okay, these are all the things I've done and these are the reasons why I've done them. And these are the things that really stuck with me. And they're the things that I want to keep doing going forward.
And I love that you don't have to commit to that. What I keep hearing from you is I have these stereotypes in my head of what I think work to get into university, but you're saying there's a place for a lot of different people.
That's been my experience, yes.
And I found that to be true, where there were some kids from Bella's school that were more academic, but if someone told a story better in an essay with lower grades and didn't even have the resume, they would get the offer versus the other kid that maybe couldn't tell the story as well.
Oh, yes. Let me tell you, that happens. And so that's why, it really is good to work with somebody, a third party. I mean, I know not everybody can, but it is good to kind of get that other perspective, to be able to articulate those things. But it also works in reverse. I've had students who are super academic and didn't really do a lot of other things because it's really not a big part of the culture in Europe necessarily. Like the level of sports that we have here, it's just, there's almost nothing like it for younger students. There are those students who stand out, and I have had students get recruited for sports. And they coming from Europe, they're just great athletes, and they excel in whatever sport that they choose to do. But what I'm saying is sometimes I get a super academic student and he or she doesn't have a lot of other things going on, doesn't have a lot to say. And so we focus on the academic strengths and we tell that story. And that can be a great story.
Well, and the other thing I'm hearing from you is, and I say this to Bella all the time, your light shines brightly, but not everyone will see your light. So you need to find people that see your light.
Yes, true.
And I think that's true with colleges, is that you can submit to who you believe is your dream college. But when a college sees your light, like she perceived that I grew up an Aggie, she grew up an Aggie, we thought she'd be an Aggie.
Of course,
but UT saw her light in a way that A&M didn't. And she couldn't pass up on their special offer versus A&M's kind offer, but it wasn't special.
Right. Yeah. You have to, and you need to choose wisely and pick the places where you're going to shine, both in the admissions process and then when it comes down to making your choice once you've been admitted.
So I also talked to you about starting early. For Bella, we started in middle school because we wanted to make sure she was going to the right middle school. So we already had a relationship because we weren't sure if she was best at the most academic middle school or at another school that wasn't as academic but more overall with sports and other things.
Right.
And for her, it ended up working out for her. But sometimes when you're at the super academic school, you're in the bottom half.
Right. Okay. Sure. Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about colleges. Do you need to go to the most significant in the job market? Do you feel like people hiring are open to other colleges?
Oh, yeah. And that's something that has changed a lot. I think the most important thing, that's changed a lot, even I would say in the last 5 or 10 years, the attitudes towards students coming out of, the most selective universities isn't, oh, we have to have those students. Now you have a little bit more recruiters looking for top performers, no matter where they are. And I think that's really important for students to know and understand. And that's where I think, the second and third years are so important in terms of getting some work experience or, finding your academic niche that's going to start leading you to that first job that's going to lead to the career that you want. And, but I think there's less, I think the most important thing is for you to stand out academically in whatever it is that you're doing.
And the admissions numbers, I don't have the statistics, but I've read so much of the South has been growing so significant, whereas it used to be the East Coast and the West Coast that was the dream school.
Yes.
Southern schools, because of the way that they've responded to COVID and being
absolutely
in person when you're paying that much to go to school versus being remote. And lifestyle. And let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that as much in the European clients because they're typically attracted to the Northeast and the West Coast, like you just described. But I also talk about the South and the Southwest because I think there are so many opportunities there. And like you said, that's growing, that's becoming more selective, a lot of the universities. And selectivity is not a sign of quality necessarily, but it's something that people kind of stand up and listen to. So, I can tell people, these universities are getting a little bit more selective and these are the reasons why. And you did a good job explaining what the reasons are. We have really excellent universities in the South and, people are no longer thinking, oh, I can't go to the South. I kind of had that mindset myself coming from, I grew up in New England. I just thought, you have to go to university in New England or that was it. And I mean, a long time ago, that's certainly not my attitude as a college counselor. But when I was growing up.
But even 10 years ago.
Yeah, maybe.
It was much more the feeling. And
well, the South has grown. And the other thing to look for, and this is getting a step ahead, is where are the industries concentrated? What is going on in some of the states that maybe you don't think about? And look at those industries and look and see what, the opportunities are going to be in a few years.
Well, and I think I've seen too, some graduates like the city they're in so much that they have internships and then they decide to stay where they've gone to school. So again, you're like the way that Austin's changed over the last 15, 20 years
Yes.
to become so much more tech.
Yeah.
Whereas you wouldn't have had that opportunity years ago.
Yeah, and that definitely attracts students who are interested in tech. I mean, they still want to go to Silicon Valley, but they also are thinking about Austin and other places, like Toronto. Bet you didn't know that was a tech hub in California, in Canada.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So are you seeing, and maybe you're not exposed to this because you mostly work for kids from Europe coming here. Do you feel like there are a lot of Americans wanting to study abroad now?
Yes, there is a lot more interest for Americans to do the bachelor's degree abroad.
Okay.
Now, students have always done study abroad. When I went to Wellesley, 40% of us went abroad during our junior year. Yeah, I spent the entire year in France, at a university in France. I went to the University of Provence in France for a year, and a lot of my classmates did. But that still exists, and I think it's more popular than it was when I was in college. But apart from that, yes, students are looking to study abroad for the bachelor's degree, and there are a couple of reasons. One of the main reasons is cost. Like if you go to university in England, the bachelor's degree is typically 3 years instead of 4 years. So you're cutting costs there. It used to be a lot less expensive. It's gotten more expensive since England left the European Union. But it's still much more reasonable. So there's that. And I think there's also communications. It's so much easier to communicate. When I was in college, I wrote letters to my parents when I was doing study abroad. We rarely got on the phone. Now,
and they weren't coming to visit all the time?
No. I did. My mother and my sister came once while I was abroad, but that was it. I didn't see them. I was gone for a whole year because I ended up staying on and doing an internship in the summer.
Well, I just keep saying to Bella, you should study abroad and I'll get an apartment in whatever city you're in. And she's like, Mom, no. I'm like, what about a train ride away? No. Okay, another big strategy I saw I'll start with this. Getting into a university as a early childhood development, wanting to be in government, and switching from that pathway into another pathway. Are colleges and universities open to that? Or again, is it completely individualistic about how they accept?
No, they are. I mean, if you're a language applicant, for example, or you're talking about early childhood development, that you want that to be your major. Yeah, there are a lot fewer people applying to that than there are applying for business or for STEM subjects like, pre-med and biology, chemistry, physics, engineering, those subjects. I think the tricky part is you can't then apply in a lot of places. You can't apply for languages and then transfer into the business school. Quite often that's just not possible. And colleges make that clear. Students don't always read the fine print. That's my job. I'm always like, hey, wait a second. The other thing is it's quite hard to make the case. Like sometimes I'm working with a student who's done a lot of things in sciences and maybe they don't have the best grades, but how are they going to turn around and say, oh yeah, I'm going to major in history because they're getting a good grade in history and they think, oh, I can get in more easily. They can't really make the case for that. So a lot of colleges do ask students, why did you select this major? Well, that's the deal breaker because you can't say, oh, I want to study psychology when really, in fact, you haven't ever even looked into it and you never studied it in school. So it's tricky. Students do it though.
They do.
They try it.
They try.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've seen a lot of is really strong students, and I'll use the example because I know it, who want to go to the University of Texas, who were accepted at other fabulous universities throughout the country, but want to stay close to home and want that culture, or going to Austin Community College, spending their first year there, hiring a consulting company, and moving in and graduating in 4 years.
Well, I will tell you something else that you will be very surprised about. First of all, let me just say that is absolutely a good route for students. Why not? Why not? I mean, if you're not going to get into the top university of your choice, but there is another avenue, use it. And that's what I tell students. Did you know that University of California at Berkeley one of our top public institutions like UT, 33% of the class are transfers from their community college.
I didn't. That gives me chills. That's incredible.
Yes. That's the way it is. A lot of students don't have the resources to go straight in. They're not ready academically. Maybe their school hasn't prepared them well enough, but they're giving those kids a chance. And that's, mainly students from California, but students from other places can go to community college too and use that same articulation system, it's called. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
And I know a lot of parents are frustrated with paying for all the expenses associated with the big school to go to a community college. But if it gets you to where you're going, rarely does it ever matter where you started. When you graduate from a university, rarely do people say, did you start there? Did you get in there?
No.
Okay, I was just told that we are way over time because
I thought you were saying we have 5 minutes to go. And here we are.
I have loved talking, and I have the best time clock. I've never gone this long before.
Wow.
Because I just love talking about this with you. Okay, you can tell that she's one of my favorite people, and I think so many people have misinformation, and there's so much frustration. So kind of as a summary, for parents with kids in high school, going to college or already in college, what are some tips that you would give them or some guidance that you would say?
Well, one thing I would say is to start early. I know I said I don't usually work with the younger students, but that is when the younger students aren't ready. But parents and families can talk to me or someone like me early on. And if it's too much for the student initially, at least the parents can get a big overview. Like, what should be happening in the high school years? The other thing is, don't forget that academics is the most important thing. You don't get a seat at the table of your top university. It is an academic institution. You don't get a seat at the table if you don't have the academics that they're looking for. So, you can go out and do as many other things as you want and build up that profile, but what's going to happen when you aren't really performing academically? That's not going to help. So those are two things I would say. Also, keep your eyes wide open. It's a big world. Be open to your child. And kids, don't always listen to what everyone else around you is doing, because
the peer group.
It's rough. Students, you don't realize that you're not hearing about all the opportunities. You're just hearing about a small number of them that maybe your friends think are cool. That's not to say that other kids who've gone to your high school don't know a lot about college. They probably would love to tell you about what's going on, but you've got to do your own research. So. All
right. Well, we have to wrap it up.
We do.
Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to talk more off screen. How do we find you?
Well, you can find me at youridealcollege.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Jennifer Koller. I don't do a lot of other social media. I don't know if LinkedIn counts as social media, but that's my favorite.
It's a way to connect.
That's my favorite social media.
And you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with her.
Yeah. Oh, and the other thing that we share, I love your style. I love what you do. I love the handbags, the jewelry, everything that you sell. That's another connection that we have. We'll have to talk about that sometime.
Yes. Fashion and her Gucci bag, vintage. She walked in with it and I was like, oh my God, I love her. All right. Second
Gotta go.
podcast.
Okay.
Bye.
Next time.
Keep it real, everybody. Keep living that authentic life.